Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining Fett263 Presents Fun with Saber Effects for Proffieboard. Thanks for everybody who joined. I see some people in the chat. Hey, Max, how's it going? Hey, Mike. Hey, Smooth Jazz family. Thanks for joining in tonight. So tonight I'm actually going to get back to some effects. Obviously with the new year I wasn't on, but before that, a lot of talk about edit mode and some of the new stuff coming. There's a lot in the works, but nothing is really ready to show. But there's a ton of stuff being worked on, but it's going to take time. And Frederick's actually helping with a lot of it. He actually kind of has a lot of actually really even better ideas. So there's a lot of stuff in the works, but no updates that are worth sharing with anybody. So tonight I'm going to focus on some effects. I've actually had a couple of questions, and I've seen a few posts that kind of gave me some ideas, just to show some new stuff in terms of effects. But if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. But anybody tuning in tonight, edit mode is still heavily in the works. There's a lot of stuff being worked on, but nothing new to report. But there is a lot of new stuff in play, and also just a lot going on with Proffieboard. For those of you on the Facebook groups, you've probably seen some of the posts and some of the little sneak peeks. And if you subscribe to Frederick's channel, he's got his own stuff he's working on, but lots of good stuff coming. But tonight I'm going to kind of focus on effects, primarily transition effects, but also talking a little bit more about layers. So those of you who like building styles, learning about the styles, I hope to cover a little bit more tonight. Maybe show some stuff people haven't even thought of yet. But feel free to drop questions in the chat. Hey, Kim, thanks for joining. First things first, recently I've been getting a lot of questions. Actually, Jesse even asked me to help him out. So in Jesse Kyberphonics videos, he uses a power-up effect that a lot of people are asking him about, and then they come and ask me about. So if anybody on here isn't familiar with my library, they're in the library. They're under what's called enhancements. There's a lot of new people getting Proffieboards, assuming that's all the people who got their Christmas wish. I know the groups, the Proffieboard support group and the open source group has seen an influx of new users. So if you're on this stream right now and you haven't found my library yet, a lot of what the questions that I'm seeing bounced around, they're in the library. So real quick, just to get kind of the housekeeping out of the way. So within the library, this is the OS5 library. Basically you're going to choose whatever bass effect you want, and a lot of you guys in the chat, I already know all this, but I just want to kind of get it on the record. These are the bass effects, and there's a ton of them, and you can watch the videos. It just shows what the bass effect is. Essentially, the bass effect is what happens on the blade while it's on, just bass line. And it's unlimited possibilities, but I have a lot in the library. The other type of effects are what I call enhancements. So once you find the style you like, you come in here. I've got 8 different colors you can choose from as the baseline, and then you're going to click your Customize Enhance button. This is where everything else is. So this is the question I've been getting a lot, is the effects where the blade is like a bright white for a little bit and it looks unstable when people first ignite. Particularly, Jesse has one video, it's escaping me the name of it, but it's really popular. It's been getting a lot of questions. The effect he's using is this Power Up Unstable 1 in white. So this is the effect you use. There's also a cooldown version, which is the reverse of it. A Power Up effect is just a brief effect that appears on the blade during ignition, and it fades out. Now on camera, this will look different for everybody. So depending on how close your camera is to your blade, when you record stuff, especially when you first ignite, and your actual camera, if you're using a phone or something, you do get you'll get a even more saturated initial thing. So some of the videos that people have been asking about, the effects are done with the blade, but how the camera captures them can be a little bit different than what your eye actually sees in person. So hopefully that helps some people out. But let me just show this real quick. So this is the effect that happens, is you get that quick white burst when you ignite, and then there's a quick white change in the when you actually retract. So it's a power-up effect. It's part of the library. It's in enhancements. Who's Robbie DeRosa is in the chat. That is my 13-year-old son. Hey, buddy. Hey, Max. So I'm not going to get distracted by it. So I didn't know he was watching. Should be in bed. All right, so let's. So I wanted to cover that. So for anybody looking for those effects, they are underneath ignition options, power up effects. There's a number of them. You can build your own. But the one that I seem to be getting a lot more questions about, particularly this week, is this actual power up unstable in white. And it's going to look different based on your base blade. It's also going to look a little bit different based on the speeds and ignition type. But that's what that effect is that seems to be everybody's after. So you can quickly and easily get it off the library. All right, so now, where's my next screen? So what I wanted to talk about a little bit here is actual transition. So there's been a few questions, and I don't think the people who asked the questions are on yet. Oh man, why am I so bad with names? But there was a couple questions that I have been trying to help out with, and I apologize for names. I'm just having a brain freeze. But basically, so transitions in and of themselves, and if you guys have seen this show for a while or are familiar, transition effects are, let me get this layered up for us. So a transition effect is just a specific effect that happens off of an event or off of an effect. So you got blast, clash, lockup, force, ignition, retraction, boot, all those. And they're represented here in these buttons. And then also if you go under effects. But what we're going to do is there's been some interest in actually having the effects be localized for transitions. And what ends up happening is all the transitions, just by their nature, actually apply to the whole blade. So there's a couple of techniques which I'm going to try to cover tonight on how you can make it work on just part of the blade. But just by how the nature of transitions, in particular the ignition and retraction that you use, they are going to try to apply to the entire blade. So there's a few effects like the join and stuff that some users have been trying to get specific effects to work, and they can't. I'm going to try to show some alternatives. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but let me get this settled in. So let's build a transition effect. And I'm just typing. You can always use the buttons, and you probably wouldn't have as many typos as I have. Let's just get something real easy. Let's use a wipe first. So this is typically an ignition effect. And then we'll wipe with red, and then we'll wipe it back across. Close that out. Concat's closed, and then we'll do this on effect ignition. And I got to close my layer. So what's going to happen on here is I'm not actually using an in-out TRL, so there's no mask. But we can do, so when I hit ignition here, you're going to see that quick, now that was a quick movement of it, is it's going to have the red wipe over and then wipe itself away. And that's meant to go over the whole blade. Now what we've done, in particular in the library, is using in-out TRL. We have the in and out, the center in, the center out ignitions. So I'm going to take this. So I wanted to just demonstrate real quick. Actually, let me take the this wipe away because I can talk about what's actually happening here a little bit better. We'll put a delay in there so it sits just long enough to talk about it. Good. All right, this should be better. So what ends up happening, man, that was quick, is the wipe transition, if you're not familiar, is going to start at the base and it's going to wipe up. Now that's normally what you use for your regular ignitions, and then there's the reverse of that, which is the wipe in, which would then start at the hilt and wipe down. In the transition effect, it's going to do this effect with the next color when you use a concat. So it's wiping red over, in this case, the blue. And then the delay here wasn't quite long enough. So we'll leave that one longer. So it's going to sit there for a lot longer. But what happens is the wipes in particular, they wipe over the entire length of the blade. So now on the center out, which is the one I was trying to get to, and I probably took a roundabout way to get there, is if I go in here and I use a join, and what join does is it's going to combine two transitions to do work together. So we're going to do a wipe, which is going to be, the wipe is going to go from hilt up, but then we're at the same time, we're going to do a wipe in, at the same speed. If you don't have it at the same speed, it gets really wonky. So we'll submit that. So now what's going to happen, oops, I reverse it. If you have something going backwards, just put an R at the end of the join and it will reverse it for you. So that's the center out. Now, it's really, at this speed, it's hard to see. So this was kind of the question, and I don't know why I'm having a hard time remembering names. And I see the chat's filling up. I'll get to the chat in a second. I'm already losing trains of thought. I want to get to this point. So let's do it again. So there's a slight lag in the center out. And that's what I'm going to primarily address today. It's if you have it at high speeds like 300, 400, 500 milliseconds for the expansion, it's almost negligible. But at these longer speeds, what ends up happening is you're going to see there was a delay between when I push this button, it's got to run its course, and when it actually happens. So I'm going to click the button now, and then the effect happens. Now, even here, it's not as noticeable, but what it's actually doing, and this is the reason I want to show the alternatives, is when you use the TR join to do the wipe and the wipe in, it's still doing it to the whole blade. What ends up happening, though, is this wipe is coming this direction, which means everything here is masked. I'm sorry, the wipe is actually so the first wipe of 1,000 is starting here, and it's working its way up. The wipe in is starting here and working its way down. What ends up happening is the wipe in is covering the wipe, and the wipe is covering the wipe in until they cross paths right about the center. So if you think about it, 50% of this 1,000 millisecond time is being spent covering something that's obscured by the other. So that's why it's very quick, but there is, when you stretch it out, you get that kind of a delay in the middle. It's actually because this guy here, you don't see the wipe in. So the wipe in starts here, it's going, it's masked, and then it finally clears to where this guy's already past the middle and they are timed to work together. Then it starts happening. So there is a little bit of delay. How to fix it is something that some people have been asking, so that's where we're going to go into next. But let me get the chat. Let's see. Hey, Derek, thanks for joining. Hey, Daddy Easy. Hey, Alex. Let's see. Dissolving on and off. You have to remind me, Derek. I don't remember specifically. I'm kind of going off of fuzzy memory, just in the rough questions, and I forget who asked them. This particular one today was mostly about that wipe, the join of the center out having a slight delay, and how to address that. It actually led to some other things, but we can also take a look at that. Just give me a little bit more description, just because memory's going bad. Alex, hey, thanks for joining. How's it going? It's been going well. You didn't miss a lot because the last 2 weeks of December there was no stream. So this is only the second of the new year. Last week I was talking a lot about edit mode. Like I said at the top of the show, if you missed it, no major updates on edit mode yet. There is a lot in the works, but nothing. Let's see. Nothing new to really report on that. And then today I'm going to talk about some transitions. Let's see. Question on the Proffieboard. Can I add power on to power on? Question on the I'm not sure what your question is, Daddy Easy. Power on, so that's a different font. I'm thinking you're meaning the out.wave. So I mostly use the Proffieboard fonts. So I'm thinking that's probably the same as out.wave, but I'm not familiar with that. It looks like it's a different file naming, so maybe that's what CFX uses. That one I'm not sure on. I mean, yeah, I'm not quite clear on what that question is, unfortunately. Derek, okay. Random pixel going to blade color from black. We can take a look. It won't be random. I think I remember this discussion a little bit, Derek. Sorry if I don't. Too much bouncing around my head. I thought I replied originally, but if I didn't, I apologize. The random part's tricky. So when you can generate random stuff on the blade, but having that random stuff be remembered by the blade is where it gets tricky, because particularly if you're going from black to a color, that's essentially turning the blade on. The blade the blade doesn't have a way to remember which parts it turned on or off if it's random. But we can kind of mimic something like that. If I have time, I'll show you kind of a rough idea. Just remind me in case memory slips. Let's see. Yeah, so sectioning off the blade was, okay, I did. Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do it. And actually a little bit of what I'm going to show today would be applicable to it. And then, like I said, if we have time to it, then we can. Let's see, different sound from. So the power up effect I showed at the top of the show, I think is what you're talking about. It uses the out dot wave or the ignition sound. I forget the Plector equivalent. It's the effect is actually an ignition effect, and it lays over the top of your actual ignition. It doesn't have a dedicated sound file. Technically, if you want to custom in your prop, you could probably stick it in, but the problem you're going to have is the out dot wave is going to overtake it. So you have to do some customization to the sound side. Sound isn't my strength. I usually buy my fonts and load them on the SD card, and I'm done with it. I'm more the VFX guy. But in terms of in the Proffi world, the out dot wave, or whatever the Plector equivalent is, I'm guessing it's power on, is what gets played when you ignite your blade. The power up effect is actually just an ignition effect that is a visual that lays over the top. It doesn't have a dedicated sound. It's using out dot wave. So you could replace your out dot wave with a different sound if you wanted. But I'm guessing you probably want your ignition. If you tried to lay something else over that, I think it would just get drowned out. But maybe if Brian Connor comes on, he's really good with sound. If he jumps in the chat, maybe he would be able to answer. Or if you ask the font guys like Jesse Kirkbride at Cographonics, they're probably a little better equipped to answer the sound stuff. Let's see. Visual effects, though, it's just effect ignition. It's just applying a particular. So this guy here, let's find him. He's buried in the code. He'll be down this way, right down. Should be here, right? There you are. This is him. So that's the power up effect, but it has a time on it where it's going to run out at 800 milliseconds fade out. So what ends up happening is when you do your ignition, it runs and then fades out. So that's the power up effect for Proffieboard. It's just an ignition effect. And it's the timing you can control. So at the bottom, right before the effect type, is this final transition. That's what tells it what to do once it's finished. So you just change this time if you want it to last on the blade longer. Let's see. All right, so we were getting to the center out ignitions. All right, so this is where we were going. I'll catch back up at the chat in a minute. So this was kind of the same thing, is it's using the TR join. You get that slight delay. Now at the 300, 400, 500, it's almost negligible. It's when I think the original person who asked the question was really stretching it out. It was then running into some issues. So here's a couple of ways to deal with it. That's not the one. That's the one there. Let's grab you. I don't know why you didn't stay. Must be too big a style. Why would that disappear on me? All right. I got to get the, I don't know why that link went away. All right, so we'll build it from scratch then. We'll just do, this browser is locked up, huh? All right, I'll get a brand new window. All right, now let's see if it likes this better. There it goes. Yeah, for some reason that window locked up. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually segment the blade. And Derek, this is somewhat related, although it's not random. And I've already built it out just because there was a lot of pieces to this. Oh, hey, Brian, thanks for joining. There was a sound question earlier in the chat if you want to take a peek at it. I know you're better at sound than me. But, all right, so we're talking about the center out. So let's do it here. Oops, did I set that as ignition? I sure did. Submit it. Why are you not working? What did we miss? Ignition, smooth step, trigger. All right, it's not liking this one. I had it working earlier. All right, we'll rebuild it from the ground up. Oh, I know why. There's no color under it. Needed a color. Let's try it now. There it goes. All right. So I'm still gonna break this down for everybody. But that was the explanation. Little technical glitch. So the basically when you use the TR join and it was doing the two wipes together, they were overlapping, and at certain speeds they weren't there. There is another way to do that same effect. And what it is actually this trigger, which I haven't used a lot, but I wanted to share it with everybody. And there's a lot of uses for it. What trigger does is it basically lets you take an event, which is just an effect, to actually start it. So in Proffi, transitions themselves are actually usually covered by are usually covered based off of an effect. But what they do is they do a transition which is going to affect the entire blade, which we were showing earlier. If you want to have something that's localized, particularly something like this type of effect, where it's going to start in the middle and work its way out, the TR join works okay, but at the slower speeds it doesn't. But if you wanted to, we're going to take two layers and we're going to use a smooth step. And what the smooth step does, let's get this here so I can show smooth step. So let's work for this one backwards. So let's first we'll do a green again. I need layers. Let's add one alpha layer. And what we're going to do is let's put a black. So this is what I call masking. Essentially, we're going to hide part of this blade so that we only see half. And how we're going to do that is with a smooth step. We're going to set the smooth step's position at the center of the blade, which is 16.384. We're going to set actually almost no, actually we'll do no fade on it. And then we will close that, close the layer, submit. So now what we've got is I've got the blade now half obscured with this black mask, this alpha layer mask. Then I'm going to add another alpha layer. And you almost can think of this like curtains on a stage. I'm going to add the other side of it. And again, we're going to put it, this time we're going to, because we have to go reverse, so if you're not familiar with smooth step, if you put a negative number in as the second value, it actually flips it to the other side. So we're going to do that. So we'll put it again at the center, but this time you can't do it -0, there's no such thing, so you do -1. Close it, close that, submit. So now you'll see I have one little pixel guy, and that's that one pixel there. So what we do is we're going to make this one a little bit bigger, right? Nope. I want maybe 2 pixels. I don't know. All right, let's go the other way. I had this working earlier. Maybe we need to make you bigger by a pixel. There it was. All right. So now, essentially, what we've got is if I just grab my green layer is here, and then I've got 2 alpha layers hiding it. And this is to create that kind of ignition effect without using a transition. I have 2 smooth steps, like I said, acting like curtains, covering up that green blade. Now I want them to open from the center out when I ignite my blade. So what we're going to do is this is it's a function we can apply. And how we're going to apply the function is we're actually going to change the position using this function trigger. So we're going to highlight the function, we're going to hit trigger, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to change this to ignition, and let's take a peek. I think it's going to be flipped from what I actually wanted. Let's see. Nope, that did it. So what ends up happening now is this is the first half of the just by putting that trigger in, it stays at its 0 value. until I hit the ignition button. So when I hit the ignition button, it gets that wipe that I want. But what I want to do is it's doing the same thing as wipe right now because it's starting at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to surround the trigger with a scale. And scale, we've talked about a little bit in the past. Scale just lets you put a top and a bottom on everything. So I don't want it to go down to 0. What I want it to do is go to 16,384. And then I want it to go, oops, I forgot a comma. I want it to go up to 32,768. Close the scale, so got that. So now this should go according to plan much faster. So it's covering a shorter distance, so I can change the speed on that. So the speed at which it ramps up is at 500 right now. I'll change that speed. How long it's going to stay is 1,000, which we're going to show that in a minute. And then how long it goes back down. So trigger is going to go up and down. But if you use it properly and get it out of the way, we can actually get this to do what we want to do. So next up, we're going to go into the second group. Down here, I'm going to change this guy. And I already know I'm going to need a scale on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this one out. I'm going to put a scale. Why is that key sticking? And then trigger. And then effect ignition. And then the speeds, I think, what do we have up there? 500. We'll change them later. Leave visible for 1,000. Bring it back down in 500. Close that. All right, that's my. So now I have to. What I want to do is I want to flip this guy. I want him to go the other way. So what you can do in the scale is we're going to start it at the 16,385, and then we're actually going to go to 0 at the end of it. That should handle the scale. So now we can go up here and we hit. Oops, the ignition's already hit, and then we get that effect. And then it's actually shrinking back on itself, which I'm going to show a good use for that later. But so now this is all set up only as a one-time effect, right? So it's going to, every time I hit power, it's going to do that. But trigger itself actually does that opening, or that it's essentially changing values going up and down at a set time based off of a triggered effect. You can do sine, you can do like slow noise, you can do all those. Those though just continuously go. And actually, Brian, I see your question. Same thing with so transition loop. So anything that's looped in the OS. So you're pulsing, you're blinking, transition loop, color sequence, a few others. They are actually timed based solely on the clock inside of the board, which means that they're not waiting for anything. They're not waiting for any commands. They are just always running. Now, they might not be visible. So if you have like in-out TRA, in-out TRL layer, if you have it in a transition effect, it's actually running its loop. It's just not visible on the blade. So transition loop and all those other ones, they're just always running. And that's why sometimes people would use pulsing for certain effects, and they can never get the pulsing to line up right because every time you would ignite the blade, it'd be at a different part of the pulse. That's because the pulse is running the whole time. Even if it's not visible on the blade, it's always pulsing at the same rate from the time you boot the board up until you take the power away. Once that style is active, the ignition and retraction have nothing to do with it. What trigger does, and same thing with the slow noise, the sine, the other functions, they just always run. Now, whether you see them or not, that just depends on what's layered over the top of them. But trigger is a function that only runs when you tell it to. And there's only a few of them that do that. Transition effects will only run when you tell them to. Transition loops, all transition loops was Frederick took the transition effects and he just lets you loop them. But again, the looping is based off of the clock now instead of the effect. So the effect is what tells the blade to do something. Minus the effect being there to tell it to do something, it just runs in a loop. So hopefully I didn't confuse you, but the transition loop is using transitions, but it's different from transition effect, so it's always running. But trigger is one of those ones that works like transition effect. And actually what we want to do now is we want to take this and we want to stick this inside of a transition effect. I'm going to put it in the in-out TRL. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps. So I'm going to first add an in-out TRL. An in-out TRL is to mask the blade so that when the power's off, it's black, and when it turns on, it does something to ignite. Usually use a white, but you can use anything. We're going to use this in a second. I'm going to put a concat in. And the reason for the concat is if you want to stick colors, if you want to put other colors into your ignition or into any effect, use the concat. Because what the concat does, if you're not familiar, is it lets you put a transition to a color, which can be different, to another color or to another transition, and then it can keep going on. What we want to do is I want to use these 2 trigger alpha layers to mimic that outward expansion minus the delay of the 2 wipes running over each other. And what we can do is we're going to do a TR instant because I don't really need a transition. This actual trigger is going to be the transition. Now I have to have 2 layers in there. So I'm going to put layers in here. And you can have layers inside of layers. For those of you who haven't done it before, we're going to grab these 2 layers. I'm going to take them out of there and I'm going to put them in here. And I got to close that layer. And then I need to keep this on screen long enough so that I don't lose it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a delay, and I'm going to just start long, and then we'll backtrack it if we need to. And then I'll close that concat, and then that should be the end of it. And then for the retraction is really easy. We'll just do the TR join, we'll do a wipe. Oops, forgot that. Wipe in, which is what we were talking about. And this, so center in works perfectly fine because there's no overlap. It's that center out one that's kind of the one that I was getting the questions on. So that's good there. Close the join, close the TRL, close the layers. What did I miss? I missed something. Layers is there. Did I forget to close the layers? I missed something and I don't see what I missed. That shouldn't be the case, right? It should be good. Oops, I had an extra bracket in there. All right, that's what it was. All right, so now what we did is I took the those 2 layers, which are gonna, so right now there's a black mask over the blade because I don't have any transitions actually doing anything. I have an instant, which is gonna flip the blade on instantaneously, and I have a delay, which doesn't actually do anything except for hold whatever's in between it. So now what's actually gonna run this center out expansion is the 2 triggers inside of the 2 smooth steps, which are layered with each other. So it's a long way to get to the finished effect, but it actually also will lean into what we get to talk about next. So now I get that nice wipe out, and then what we did is because it's in an in-out TRL, that delay of 1,000 milliseconds is just so that that animation finishes, and then it disappears. So those 2 layers are gone, and they're not actually on the blade anymore. What you're seeing is the green, and I can show this. Actually, no, I don't have any green in there. I could show it by lying. Or let's do it this way. Let's put this in here in the layer. So now what will happen is the blade will go, turn it off. So just to kind of show what's actually happening is this red is going to stay active for as long as that delay is there. And then it just goes away. So what you're actually doing by not putting the red in there, because you don't want a solid color in there. I mean, you could put green, but it's unnecessary, is I get that center out ignition with no delay. And again, if you missed the beginning of tonight's stream, what we're talking about is the TR join being used for that center out ignition. There is an inherent delay. It's not really visible at like 300, 400, 500 milliseconds. It's negligible, but the individual who was asking in particular was using it for much more stretched out purpose, and it is noticeable. And again, it's because when you join those 2 transitions, they're happening at the same time. The wipe in is going this way, the wipe out is going that way, and they're obscuring each other until they meet in the middle. And that was this guy here. So when I hit this button here, just to kind of anybody who joined late, when I hit this button, there's going to be a slight delay until you see it. And in this case, it's very fast. But that slight delay, this is the fix for it. Oops, wrong one. There it is doing with these layers. And again, you would adjust. So in the trigger, for those of you, you would change the, particularly really just worrying about changing the how long it takes to ramp up time if you want to speed it up. The how long you want to leave this alone, and the ramp back down isn't really visible right now. It actually disappears because that delay that we put in at the end of the transition ends up obscuring it until it disappears, like we showed with the red. And I see a bunch of chat. I'm going to switch over to the chat real quick. Yeah. So Derek, actually, we can kind of show that. Sparkle. So we can do, there's a couple different ways to do it. Let me see if I can, I'm going on the fly, so it might not come out perfect, but let's see if we can get you started with it. And then what time is it? I should have time to show one more thing after this. But let me see if I can square you away with that. Who don't I need anymore? I think I did this one already. Yeah, so we'll clear this out. We'll just clear all that. And we'll go, so let me see if I can get to where you want. I'll use a red blade, why not? Oh wait, what'd you say? You have a green? Let's see. Let me see if I can break this down. So solid mass that fades to the blade color underneath over the ignition times. Random sparkle, bright flashes. Fades away. That might, let's do it in green. And I think I know what you're talking about. Hopefully I get close. So we're gonna have a base color of green. What we're gonna do is we're going to add a transition effect as our masking layer. So let's see, I want that to be, I want it to come up instantly when we call it. Then we're gonna want a, let's see what Sparkle does. Now Sparkle, just letting you know, is one of the bigger styles. So it will end up, if you have a lot of heavy styles, this is one of those ones that takes up a lot of memory. But let's do a Sparkle in black with green. I think that's what I want. I haven't used Sparkle in a little while. I might have that wrong. And then we will do a really long fade on it. And we'll close. Oops, I forgot my concat. I don't know why I always do that. Anytime you're adding more than one transition, you need a concat in front of it. We're going to do this on effect ignition. Let's take a peek at what that looks like. This is only the first piece, so this isn't the finished product. And not perfect. Need to do something else. I gotta mask the whole green layer. Let's do, let's do another instant. This time we're just gonna do straight black. That'll be our masking layer, and then we will do a fade. I think we did 3000. I'll do that a little bit there. I forgot my concat again. Close you. All right, power's off. Power on. Blast fades up. Probably have to slow that. Getting there. Let's see. So now if we, I want that to go slower. So let's double that time. Let's see what ends up happening with this. Those greens are a little too active in the sparkle. If we slow them down, chance of new sparks. Let's lower that. Spark intensity should be okay. Let's try it again. It kind of works. I'm not sure if that's what you're after, though, Derek. Let me show. This was, I think, what I was going after earlier when I was first chatting with you. So I'm going to wipe this. I'm going to show one more idea for you. Let's put it in and out TRL so it runs properly. And this might not be perfect either. I'm kind of making this one up on the fly. Let's get a concat. I want to go, I actually want to fade it off of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, let's see if this works. So this will actually maybe be something for everybody to learn from. We're going to add an alpha layer. Alpha layer. No, let's do a mix because I need black on this one. We're going to put in the mix though. Is, let's see, I want a layer function, and we'll do bump. Let's do, we're going to start with it like this. Just kind of making some numbers up just to get us started. This you'll end up wanting to build out a little more. Let's do a size, and then let's see, we'll do, what else do I want on that? Good there, that's good. I gotta close that bump, and then we'll do another bump. And this is just to get you started. You probably want to mess with this a bunch more, but what we're going to do, so we're going to do layer functions. I know I've talked about it in the past. We're going to put a few bumps on the blade. And have them act as the transition, and then we can actually put a little movement to them, and maybe they'll look a little better. They may look terrible though because I haven't done this. But let's go down this path. Let's take a peek. Let's get up something a little higher on the blade. And my keyboard decided to stop understanding what I'm typing. What the hell? Okay. You don't like that? All right. Let's see. Get this. Those wireless keyboards, I think my battery's going. They reacted after, killing me. All right. I typed everything I didn't want there. Where are you? There you are. I'll make this one a little bigger. Bump, right? So I've got mix of layer functions. I've got 2 bumps there. And do black. Is this keyboard slowing down on me? Green, and then we'll do a really long fade. Close that. And we'll just do a white bin just to finish out the TRL. Close the layers. Not beautiful. I think I need a delay here. Let's see if we do a delay instead. All right, so they're really close together. Let's spread them out a little bit. And you would add more. So now, let's see. So what we could do now, right? So that's kind of, I think, oh wow, the chat went off on me. Sorry guys, I was too busy in thought. Let me catch up with the chat. Let's see. Yeah. Smooth Jazz Family, yes, but you'd have to build it. But yeah, you can do that too. Maybe some of this will apply to that. Let me see. I'm just catching up on chat because I left it unattended for too long. Let's see. Motor in a crystal chamber? I have never used a motor in a Saber. I've seen some discussions on it, but you probably want to maybe ask in the Facebook groups. I don't think many people have done it. I know I've seen some questions about it. I know Frederick a while ago said it was possible, but I don't even remember what pads you used. That's way outside my realm, unfortunately. Let's see. Hey Jesse, thanks for joining. We were talking about you earlier. All good stuff. Hey Lyle. Let's see. Pink Blade, Blue Clash, and Lockup, and for Mel going into blue, into orange, red. Easiest way would be to just edit the colors of those effects. Yeah, so I can try to show that in a moment. Yeah, all right, let me finish this out. Sorry if I lose the, let's take a look. So what we want to do now, right? So we have these, let me see, did I submit that? Yeah, okay, there's a further apart. So what we're going to do is you can add more bumps, but what we're going to do now is we're going to add another step in here. So I want to copy just this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this back to a fade, and then I'm going to add that mix I grabbed. Right, yep, there you are, good. And then we're going to fade it again. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to enlarge. Let's go triple. See what this looks like. And you probably want more than two. You could get away with however many. So layer functions let you put a bunch of bumps together to make this effect. But that would do it, and you would change your timings, but that might get to where you want. So you'll see these two bumps. So if you had enough bumps in there, and this is based on Derek's original question, and you can change the speeds of those fades if you really want them to be fast, but that might be the way to get after it. It just obviously can't be random. The random's the tricky part because when you're transitioning, the random doesn't hold its place essentially. So like any transition particularly for ignition, you're actually going from black to a color. That black is built into the in-out TRL, which then fades out with your transition. But if you just put like a random, like something like slow noise or whatever on there, it's not going to hold its place. So you'd get it would spark and disappear versus spark and stay. So the spark and stay part is where using the layer functions with the bumps works. And you would just add more. You can add several other bumps and have them change size. And technically, you can also put in like you can use that trigger function. So like if we did that, actually, we can do where the trigger. This is going to look weird, but let's use the trigger. I want you here. I'm going to put the trigger on this one. And I'll put. This is just an idea. It's probably not going to look perfect, but this could work too. Yeah, it was too quick. Let's see. Yeah, that didn't work quite like we wanted. Oh, let's scale it maybe. Let's give it some required. Let's keep it in the middle of the blade. That might be a little better. So, well, it moved. Not quite what we wanted, but yeah, It's probably take a little bit more, but for Derek's original question, I think if you use layer functions with this type of a concat in a mix and just add a couple other bumps, you can probably get something similar to what you want. Because really what you want to do is you want to have that bump grow and hold its place, and then have another bump grow and hold its place, and then another one grow and hold its place. Again, it wouldn't be random, but it would kind of go for that effect you were talking about. Daddy Easy had a question about colors. Let me cover that. And then I did want to touch one more thing just really quick. I don't think I'm going to get to run through the whole thing. But where was your original question? Making pink blade, blue clash, and lockup, melt going blue to orange. So pink blade closest to pink. We'll start in the red. Grab a red. I'm going to clear these effects. I don't want to mess with anything else. So I'm actually going to turn these off for now. And so Daddy Easy, the current editor doesn't support every effect in the library, but if you just grab this base thing, it actually does. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the style, and we're going to go, I don't think that one I was just working on. We can go here. This keyboard, I think my battery is totally going on this keyboard. There we go. We're going to paste it, submit it. All right, so now what we've got is we've got the red blade. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to change the red blade. Now you could use color change to do the base color, but if you want to change the clash and the lockup and everything, those don't have color change on them. So what we'll do here is we'll just change this to pink. I don't know if you mean pink or hot pink, but same difference. And then typically for an audio flicker or a lot of styles, what you're going to see is it's basically a dimmed version. Now, I don't know the number on pink, but I think pink has some additional values here. So I'm guessing at numbers. This might not be it. Let's see if it's kind of like that family. That looks about right. I think I'll up it. And it's really whatever color you want. I'm just trying to get it in the family. That's close enough. So let's see what that audio flicker looks like. So that's a pink, deep pink. All right, we can do deep pink. Same thing, click deep pink. That's a lot more purpley, so I'm going to want to pull down this, actually no, I want to pull down the green value. I think that'll get us more in that family. It might not be quite enough variation. It's decent enough for an audio flicker, but you get the gist. So in the editor, you're going to change that. Now we're going to find our lockup. Let's see, so that is, that's our lockup. So let's find our lockup color is right here. You want a blue clash and lockup. So instead of white, we'll do blue. And then built within, built within that lockup TRL should be begin and end lockup. Where are you? That's you. Make you blue, and then that's the transition. We need the blue to be there, and then that's the end lockup. That's the blue. Lightning block we'll leave alone. Now we need the clash. Should be, that's stab. I think you said stab in there. No, you said melt. All right, so let's find clash should be next. Clash here is also set for white currently. We'll change that to blue. And you get used. If you're new to the editor, and let me put your comment away too. Daddy Easy. The names of the sections are here. So responsive clash. That's what I'm reading. Or you can read the effect type. Like here, it says effect blast. That means everything above it. So there's a couple ways to identify them. And then let's grab. That's drag. You didn't say drag. You said melt. There should be melt. So melt has two colors. And I got to get to it. So you want to go blue to orange, red. So we're going to change the first color to blue and the second color to orange, red for melt. And then that should be it. So then we'll go all the way back up, click on this to grab it. There's your pink blade. Let's do a clash as blue. It gets a little washed out. Pink is a brighter color than blue, so you might end up having to adjust it, but it's there. And then we will do the lockup. And there's your blue lockup. Again, blue. So pink uses a mix of green and, no, a mix of blue. This deep pink uses blue with red, so you actually have two dyes going versus blue being only one dye. So you might not want to pump that color up, but it's there. And then let's go to melt. So melt is going to go, and that orange red is going to be really close to the pink value, but you can kind of see it. But that's basically how you would change the colors. You could do that on any of the styles. So you can grab any of the styles. Now, like I was saying earlier, ProffiOS 5's the OS5 library, there are some of these enhancements that aren't supported in the editor yet. If you get a style out of the library and you paste it in an editor and you get an error message, it's known. It's because Frederick is just so busy. He's got to add a few new features. So typically, if you pasted something over here, it would see something like I think Effect Power Save is not supported, or there's a couple others that are not there yet. Effect Sequence, blah blah blah. This is responsive. These are all the responsive. So if I go to the lockup, it's actually the responsive lockup. You'll see it move. It's just the blue is a little harder to see here. But all the effects are responsive unless you choose otherwise. By default, and this is just for everybody in general, by default, when you go to Customize Enhance, if you never touch anything in this screen and just scroll to the very bottom, hit Get Style, it's going to have all the responsive stuff built in automatically. I default to responsive. If you want to change something, so if you didn't want responsive lockup, you could do the animated or the full blade. But by default, I make responsive on everything. So if you grab out a library, it's automatically responsive. You actually have to go in and change it if you don't want it to be responsive. Because most people I found wanted the responsive stuff, but that's all in this screen. But yeah, you can change any of the colors pretty easily. Let's see. We're getting close to the end of time. Let me catch back up on chat, and I'm going to give a peek of what I was hoping to show, but obviously answering questions kind of comes in. Let's see. Where are we? Hey, Lyle. Mike D. Motion timeout used in between. Motion timeout is used to keep your blade recognizing gesture. So by default, ProffiOS, when you turn your blade off, forget the time, but after a very short period of time, what it actually does is it turns off the motion chip, which means that if you have like a swing on or a twist on or any of the other gesture ignitions, they're not recognized unless you press a button first. There is a motion timeout define that extends it. Now, there's some chat in TRA. There's a few things going on with just the motion chip in general that we're trying to debug. I haven't experienced it, but it seems like a couple of users are, so we're trying to figure it out. So there could be a bug somewhere that got missed in beta that's temperamental, but it's essentially the motion timeout define is supposed to keep the motion chip active for however many minutes you put in there, just so you can use the gestures. For me, I haven't really experienced any issues with it, but there are people who are, and we haven't figured out why. So it could be a combination of styles. It could be a font thing. It could be the actual defines being used. It could be the prop file. There's a couple of variables in there. So if you're having trouble, go over to the TRA. There's actually a thread I just posted in earlier. Brian's in it, and Frederick's been kind of giving some advice. We are looking at something. So if you're having some weird behavior, maybe report it over there, hook up to the serial monitor, give you a readout. I've been asking Frederick to help narrow it down. I haven't had the time to try to replicate it. I just know I did a ton of testing on this stuff. I never ran into it. So unless something changed, and nothing changed because the last test was OS 5 when it released. But if you have an odd behavior with motion timeout, that there is some discussion on it. If it's a bug, it'll get fixed. We're just trying to narrow down what it actually is. Let's see. Christmas style Hanukkah blade. Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. I did the Christmas tree just really quick and easy. Obviously, we're past that time of year, but a Hanukkah style, you could break the blade up into 9 sections and have them go off in order if you wanted. That'd kind of be like the Assemble. If you look at the Preon effects in my library, Assemble does something. It's not 9, I think it's 5, but same concept. But yeah, that could totally be possible. We can break that out pretty easily. If you're still hanging out and doing styles and you haven't figured it out by next holiday season, just shoot me a message. I can throw it together. let's see. Hey, Bobby. Yeah, politics we're going to leave out of this. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to sign off in a moment or two, but I really wanted to show this because I got this all prepped. I might have to. There it is. Thought I closed the window. That would have really been bad because I worked on this for a little while. So if we have time next week and I don't get to show all of this, we'll maybe circle back on this one. What this kind of came out, and again, I apologize even if you're on the chat and I forgot who you are, who was asking about something like this. This kind of ties back to what I was originally talking about with the use of the joins. Somebody had asked about the seismic. So Boba Fett's ship and Jango Fett in the prequels, the seismic charge that they drop, spoiler alert, from the Mandalorian. Somebody wanted to kind of replicate it on the blade. So this was a really quick stab at it. I didn't actually get to mop. So basically, I put it on blast. So I'm using this kind of blue. When I hit blast, I'm going to get a suck in and a burst out. And I wanted to describe what we were doing here, but time's going to limit me today. So maybe next week we'll cover a little more. But essentially, just real quick and easy, if somebody wants to mess with it on their own, I'm using a wipe in to a black mix. So what I want is I want to have that kind of like the moment where the explosion kind of works in on itself, sits for a second, and then bursts back out. So what we're doing is we're using that join, but we're pulling it in. So when you pull it in, you don't have that white, but the obscure problem where the half and half. So I'm doing a really quick wipe into the middle with this black essentially, but there's a bump, a really tiny bump in the center of white, and that's going to fade out to an all black blade. And then we're going to get this burst out really quick. And again, because of the speed, you won't see any delay on it. And you're going to get this white burst that then fades over the blade. And I'm having on blast. You could do it on other effects, but it's meant to be kind of like that sonic boom. Now the timings aren't perfect. I didn't have the sound from the Mandalorian or the prequel in front of me. Usually I would time it specifically, but the concept is kind of like that seismic charge where it sucks in just for a quick second. Now, in obviously in three-dimensional space in the effects, it goes from being this kind of expansion of a ball into a flat, almost like a disc. You can't do that with the blade, but this was kind of a stab at that. So just something maybe we'll talk about a little more next week. It's actually pretty simple. I was just trying to get it timed out. And then I see a couple more chat. I'll take two more questions, and then I'm probably going to head out for the night. So Joe 6, you're joining us a little late. Earlier in the show, I started off. There's a lot going on with edit mode, but no news. The news is that there's a lot going on. Everything's been working great. I've been working really closely with Frederick. Frederick actually had some new ideas. So we're going down, we're looking at some other stuff. That's all I can really say, just because nothing's even really in proof of concept yet. If this stuff pans out, I will obviously get proof of concepts and put those videos together and make some kind of updates on it. It's all really cool. That's all I can say is like everything that you've seen with edit mode so far, I'm going to say that's the tip of the iceberg. But there's a lot of potential and a lot of great ideas that Frederick has, and I've been bouncing some stuff off him. He's been coming back with stuff, and it's been really great. And a lot has come out of it, but nothing's been put to code yet because some of the stuff is going to require some changes to the OS that Frederick has to make because they're outside my skill set. But lots of stuff in the works, but there's no ETA just because there's still a lot actually in play. But the end result, when we get there, I think everybody's gonna be really excited about. I'm really psyched about it, but I don't have anything other than there's a lot of cool stuff in the works. So let's see. Yeah, the seismic charge effect in the films, and when they recreated on the Mandalorian, I was super excited. Obviously, my screen name Fett263. For those of you who haven't known, Boba Fett was my first love. That was actually the first costume I put together all the way back in 1996. Yes, I'm that old. That was my first costume I registered with the 501st. I think I was the 5th Boba Fett in the 501st. I was the first Boba Fett in the Empire City Garrison, which was New York City. Actually, the whole East Coast back all the way in those days. But with 501st being a costuming group, I was the only Boba Fett in New York for a really long time. Actually, when we first started the Empire City Garrison, all the face characters like Darth Vader and Boba Fett, we would never allow any others to join in. They could only do events that we didn't attend. So we had one Darth Vader, one Boba Fett, and a whole lot of stormtroopers. And we eventually got a Jango Fett. But so Boba Fett has always been my favorite. That was my first character I loved. And to see him back in The Mandalorian and to see the tie-ins to the prequels, super exciting for me being a longtime fan. So yeah, that was really cool. Thanks, Bobby. So yeah, if anybody has any other questions that you can get to touch on, you guys can always message me. You can leave in the chat on this video. It will post. So if you're joining late and you missed the beginning, feel free to rewind it and watch. If there's stuff you want me to maybe talk about next week, drop it into the comment section, and hopefully I didn't go too crazy with everybody. I kept everybody on board long enough for you to learn a little something, particularly about the trigger. The big takeaway for trigger is it actually lets you do transitions without a transition effect, but it does have a two-way movement. So you do want to, if you're going to use it for a one-way movement, what you're going to do is stick that in the middle of something that then disappears, like we did with that transition effect on the ignition. But thanks everybody for joining in tonight. Thanks for joining in the chat, and we should be good for next week. And I'll try to touch back on this one, do a little more work on it, get it a little polished up for everybody. And then show everybody how we got it done. So thanks, everyone. Have a good night.